In 1896, a guy named Carl Oakley was on an expedition in East Africa collecting animal specimens for the Field Museum in Chicago. It was getting dark and he saw movement in the bush. He assumed it was a hyena and fired without looking properly. The sound that followed was not from a hyena, it was a leopard, and he had just made it very angry. Now I need you to understand what a leopard is. This is not a large house cat. This is an 80-pound ambush predator that Oakley himself described as an animal that will fight to the finish practically every time, no matter how many chances it has to escape. Great. And he just shot at one in the dark without hitting it properly. Fantastic start. The leopard charged and Oakley fired 3 more times. He missed twice, and on the 4th pull he heard the worst sound a person can hear in that situation. A click. Empty magazine. And an angry leopard, now airborne, heading directly at his face. This is the part where most stories end with, and he was never seen again. But this one doesn't. The leopard landed on him and went straight for his throat, but Oakley shoved his right arm into its mouth instead, which is apparently a thing you can do when your brain decides you're dying and it's not on schedule today. He grabbed the leopard's throat with his left hand and slowly, inch by inch, dragged his arm through its jaw while choking it. Then he fell on top of it, pinned its chest with his knee and held on until the leopard stopped moving. He strangled an 80-pound leopard to death with his bare hands, then walked back to camp and got his wounds treated, posed for a photo next to the dead leopard, and made sure the skin was properly preserved for the museum. Because he was still on the clock. The man fought a leopard to death and clocked back in. I call in sick when it rains. In 2019, a trail runner named Travis Kaufman was jogging in Colorado when he heard pine needles rustling behind him. He turned around and saw a mountain lion already mid-lunge in the air and coming at his face. There's no amount of cardio that prepares you for that. The lion bit down on his wrist and locked its jaws. Kaufman had no weapons, no bear spray and no phone signals, just running shoes and the kind of adrenaline your body only produces when it's genuinely considering whether or not this is the end. He managed to pin the animal down with his knee and stepped on its neck until it suffocated. With his bare hands on a trail on a regular Thursday afternoon jog. Most people come back from a run with sore knees, and this man came back with a confirmed kill. He walked himself to the nearest trail, found another runner and casually got a ride to the hospital, where he received over 24 stitches. When asked about how he knew what to do, he said he once read an article online about surviving mountain lion attacks and followed every piece of advice exactly. The internet saved someone's life, and I can't even find a reliable recipe on the internet, and this guy used it to defeat a predator. The mountain lion turned out to be a juvenile, about 35 to 40 pounds, which somehow makes this even worse. If a baby one almost killed him and he barely survived, the adult version is basically unkillable. And he still won. Rick Nelson, a former boxer from Sudbury, Ontario, was walking his dog when he stumbled across a black bear cub. Cute, adorable even. Except when there's a cub, there's a mother. And she was already looking at him the way you look at someone who just touched your food. The mother bear stood up on her hind legs and swiped at him, and most people would freeze or run. But Rick Nelson is a retired boxer whose brain had exactly one response. It loaded and it was violence. He threw a right hook that connected directly with the bear's teeth, splitting his hand open. And when the bear scratched his chest, Nelson threw another uppercut to the bear's snout. The bear, apparently not expecting to encounter someone with legitimate boxing credentials in the middle of the Canadian forest, paused, reconsidered his life choices and walked away. Nelson went home and got stitches and had the kind of story that nobody would ever believe if it hadn't actually happened. A retired boxer uppercutting a bear in the face and the bear walked away. That's not a survival story, that's a Disney movie that got rejected for being too unrealistic. Now this is one of my favorites because it happened twice in the same morning to the same person by the same bear. A man named Todd was scouting for an elk in Montana when a grizzly bear with cubs charged at him, so he deployed his bear spray. But the bear ran straight through it like it was a light mist on a summer day and mauled away at him, biting his arm, clawing his back and tearing through muscle and skin. Todd played dead, covered his neck and waited until the bear eventually left. Most people's stories end here. I survived a grizzly attack. That's enough. That's a lifetime of dinner party material right there. But Todd's story was just getting started. Bleeding from everywhere, Todd got up and started the 3-mile hike back to his truck. But 10 minutes later, the same bear came back. The same one, and attacked him again. Bit into his arm, tore into his shoulder and ragdolled him on the ground. Todd played dead for a second time, and the bear left a second time. And he got up a second time. And then, this is the part that makes me question whether this man is even real. He pulled out his phone and recorded a video of himself with his face covered in blood, calmly narrating what just happened, and he was reviewing it like a restaurant. The video went viral, and then he drove himself to the hospital with the injuries from 2 grizzly attacks. Todd got mauled by a grizzly twice in one morning, hiked 3 miles, filmed a vlog and drove himself to the ER. Tell that to the former Twitter staff, whose biggest daily challenge is surviving 80% of meetings and finding time for their 3rd coffee. So what's the takeaway here? I genuinely don't know. I'm not going to pretend these stories inspired me to fight wildlife. If anything, they confirmed that I should probably just stay inside. But there's something fascinating about what happens when a human survival instinct fully takes over. Because every one of these people said some version of the same thing. I didn't think, I just acted. Which means somewhere inside all of us there's a version that could, theoretically, strangle a leopard, and we just really hope we never have to meet that version. Most people panic when their phone drops face down on concrete. These people fought apex predators and walked away. Humanity is wild. I'll probably never go camping again, so see you next time.